At a major Hollywood studio, in a corner office of Sub-Basement D, the development executives toil in obscurity to reboot it. Guys, we are in the golden age of franchise entertainment where it doesn't matter if you want your favorite franchise to be rebooted, it will be rebooted. So real quick to go around the table and establish the bona fides, to my left, from Hot Takes with Billy Business and a senior producer at Screen Junkies, Billy Business.
Happy to be here in one of my favorite franchises. I don't know how we're going to do this.
Yeah, so Billy, we're talking about Back to the Future today.
Yeah.
Which one is your favorite?
I mean, I love part 2, man.
Oh.
I love 80s, what they thought the future was going to be. That's one of my favorite niche genres.
I think I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
I think that one's my favorite. Yeah. All right, on the other side of the table, the dynamic duo. You know them from the Nerd Goat podcast. You've seen Ed Greer on Comedy Central and on Screen Junkies every week. Ron Swallow, Ed Greer.
Hi, guys.
What's going on? I don't think we should do this, man. Abort. This is this just seems so hard. This is a nice task.
I think of all the people who could do it, I think we can pull it off. I really do think I have a couple ideas. You know, I'm not.
I love your ideas, Ron.
Yeah, I'm not obsessed with them or anything like that. But right. I've got a couple ideas where we could go with that. I think you guys do as well. I think we're gonna do great.
So I will ask this, Ron. How old were you when you saw Back to the Future for the first time? Do you remember?
I actually saw it in the theater.
Oh, nice.
So I would have been 9 years old, 10 years old.
Nice.
My parents took me to that one.
Was that a big one in your childhood?
You know, I don't remember it that well when I was a child. I remember it later as I got older.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
And, you know, you get a little older and then you rewatch it and you go, oh, this is great.
Ed, favorite movie?
Probably the second one because it doesn't have somebody, teaching Chuck Berry rock and roll.
Oh, a sore spot for the young Ed Greer.
That is a part we will not reboot.
No, can't we go back to the 90s and teach Korn how to teach Tom Morello how to yell into a microphone?
Yeah.
Well, today we are talking about Back to the Future. Back to the Future, of course, was released in the seminal year of 1985 and featured young Marty McFly, crazy old Doc Brown, retrofitting a Delorean to become a time machine and taking it back to 1955. The franchise went on for 2 more films. In the second one, they did an incredibly inventive structure where they looped back on the first movie and also took us forward to the far-flung year of 2015. and then finally, in the third one, everything went back to the Old West, and I gotta be honest, I don't even remember how that one ended.
But they got a train.
Yeah. So this is our task, gentlemen. Marty McFly and Doc Brown are iconic characters, right? And not only are they iconic characters, they're iconic performances. So the question number 1 for me is, how do we replace those 2 people? Number 2, how do we tell a fresh story while honoring what's happened before? And I guess the big one off the top, maybe this is where we start. Are we retelling the Marty McFly story, or are we picking up where they left off? What do we think?
Well,
go ahead, Ron.
In the honor of the challenge, I think we have to retell the story.
Okay.
Right.
Well, it could be a Ghostbusters 2016 situation where it's theoretically they could have continued in the same world, paying lip service, but they chose the hard reboot. I know you just recently did this on your podcast.
Yeah, and I think they purposefully did that because they wanted a brand new canvas. And I think for Back to the Future, I would say there are themes that the first Back to the Future has, and you can use the same kind of time travel mechanisms to update it and do new themes. I think we've talked a lot about in this room, especially how we have pop culture is kind of now become confused with people's personal identities.
Yeah.
So what if you were taken out of time and you couldn't really figure out what your identity was? How do you strip that away?
Oh, that's interesting. Wait, expand on that. You mean racially?
No, I mean more in the sense of, someone, I think, we can, one of the themes you can tap into is what makes you who you are. And right now we're kind of, it's well, Star Wars makes me who I am. It's no, that's a part of you. That's not what makes you who you are. And I think what better way to do that? It's well, what if you were ripped away into a time where the things that you thought defined who you are not there anymore?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So when you went back in time, all those things were not. The same
They just
things?
weren't there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine if you went back into the 40s or the 30s right
And
now.
there's no Star Wars.
There's no Star Wars. There's no movies. Stand-up comedy kind of isn't. At least
barely exists,
what
yeah.
you know it is. Who's Ron Swallow?
That's super interesting. Let's start kind of where we always start. What do you think an audience needs to see in this sort of a reboot?
Well, I mean, I think the main thing they want to see is something much like what you guys are talking about, this whole like idea of identity, you not being either who you are or your life being so different as to not be unrecognizable. You know what I mean?
Right.
We need to have the threat of somebody's life being unrecognizable. We also need to have the power that comes with being able to travel in time being explored as like, okay, these are the ways you do it. How, the villain does it this way, the hero does it this way.
Right.
We have to see those themes.
Yeah, I would actually love to, almost like how Marvel movies do it. Like if you took the 3 Back to the Future movies that exist, it's like, oh, let's pick and choose elements from part 2, part 1, kind of reboot it that way.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's
Yeah.
like you're taking the canon and telling the streamlined version of the canon.
Kind of, yeah. I think that's kind of interesting.
Look, I think given where we are with blockbuster entertainment, you almost need like a chase through time in this movie.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the first ones were almost like the time travel was almost ancillary to the character drama, and I sort of feel, I don't know that it needs to be the point of the movie, but I feel like if we're gonna do this here in 2019, 2020, like you need to up the time travel antics.
Well,
Okay,
that's
so
my feeling.
Right.
much like one of the best movies in the 90s, Time Cop. Is that what you're...
Yeah, can we cast JCVD in this?
well, hey, I don't know if it counts as Back to the Future canon. I don't know if there's a Back to the Future, like, no, I don't think so, sir. But Back to the Future,
Of
the
course there is.
ride, that's
Oh,
what that is.
yeah.
They are not just going to the future, they're going to the dinosaur age. They're going
Yeah, I
all over
remember
the
that.
place in a literal chase. They're chasing Biff.
Well, yeah, I would say this. If we're gonna say Back to the Future, back in the days, Back to the Future was up to 1985,
Right.
back up to right now, or to 2015. I think we should kind of, I don't know, man. It's not about story yet, but I'm just saying, like, what about the Buck Rogers of like, yo, we need you to come to the far-flung future to do X because you're the right person for right now because of some weird causal loop we're explaining on the way. Like, you're required in the far-flung future because of something that you've done with the time travel shit right now. Like, I was thinking, like, Marty McFly set
Yeah.
his life right.
Yeah.
But what about obviously in the movies they explored the butterfly effect.
So you're really saying like the hero's quest mixed in more, because I don't think Marty necessarily goes on a hero's quest as it is.
No, I mean it's almost
Well, there's
he's lost,
Right,
Like he's
right.
trying to find his way home. It's a Wizard of Oz story.
Well, it is that, but it is also about, I mean, a big portion of the whole thing that we forget about because of how much fun the time travel is and all the antics that are involved with that is that it's really about him becoming secure enough to not take people calling him a chicken so seriously. I know that sounds weird, but that's a huge part.
That's thrown in the second and third movie.
Yes,
which
but that's
they
what I'm
did-
saying.
Right.
If you include all three, that's what...
Right, so I think that also ties back into like, yeah, who are you and who can you be?
And where do you learn your morals from when all that stuff that you were...
Well, I think that's what you're hitting at. First of all, I thought you were going to say that what this is really about is incest. But
I mean, it is, and we should definitely not include that.
no, but I think
Worked for Game of Thrones.
Unless it's hilariously accidental.
but wrapped into that, right, is the idea the first movie is really about him learning respect for his parents.
That's true.
I mean, that's what the movie is about on like the fundamental
true.
thematic level.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if we need that whole learning respect for the older generations part of this story.
Or like basically, but I think it's more to the point where he set his father's life right, quote unquote.
oh yeah, fixing your family
You know what I mean?
Sins of the
Yeah, by
father.
teaching his
You know what
dad
I
to be
mean?
brave.
So
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, like, what if we were just to entertain the idea of following up the adventure? What if their adventure went exactly as it is? And even if we saw, Alex P. Keaton right now, what's his
Right.
name? Marty McFly. We see
Michael J. Fox.
Michael J. Fox. Oh my God, you just circular Teen Wolf.
Doc Hollywood.
The guy who shakes a lot.
Yeah. So we have him. We could even have him as he is, and have the Doctor as he is.
Doc Brown.
Yeah, Doc Brown as he is. I mean, they're still alive. They're still
Christopher Lloyd.
extant.
Like, you want to use Christopher Lloyd.
I'm not
Maybe.
saying I want to do that. I'm just saying if we did that, you have people who exist who had an adventure. This is their lives after this grand adventure. But guess what? What you did affected Buck Rogers' time, and now it's all weird. And maybe they can't participate in the adventure, but they could be like, look, kid, who's
Flashpoint paradox.
Well, that's kind of how I saw it. Was maybe you take this in the Bumblebee route, where it's like, yeah, the other ones probably existed, but it's a new person, a new adventure, updated.
What? And so I was kind of thinking. Let me ask this question: do you guys remember where did the DeLorean end up at the end of part 3?
It's dead. It is hit by a train and into a million
destroyed.
pieces.
And they turned the train into
the train becomes the new time machine. All I'm saying is, I love the idea. You could almost mix it with like an Indiana Jones type feel if some archaeologist or even just like a builder in the American Southwest finds the time travel technology.
Interesting.
And so it becomes like a weird Terminator causal loop sort of thing. But I also like what you guys are saying. I mean, I'm almost picturing like a Superman and the Legion of Superheroes type of thing where does somebody come back from 500 years in the future in their own time machine to recruit somebody related to Marty or Doc or whatever, and it becomes sort of... Could you do both? I mean, could you really have this... Could you really like turn time into a pretzel sort of a thing?
Well, I think by definition, what they did... It must be caused by the original adventures, and the holes punctured in time must be atoned for. They never atoned for that other than personal stuff or the fact that the world changed because Biff got so rich and got so Trumpian in the second one. That's about as far as they go as far as the world being affected by their adventures.
Yeah.
So we must pay for those adventures. Like those adventures punctured time to the point we have to have this new adventure.
But I would say...
well, maybe, I mean, that might be a cool thing.
But I would say what makes Back to the Future what it is and what you can never lose sight of is that, and then we said at the beginning of this, the time travel is very much secondary to the human elements, the stories.
Themes.
Like when you think about the time travel, and that's why I understand the criticism some people have of part 2 is that it gets very time travel-y, but that first one, he time travels twice in the whole movie. Like time travel has nothing really to do with it once he's in the 50s. So
I think it's about establishing a place for him to be in the future or the past that's interesting for a period of time.
That helps him get to a point where he changes or she changes, themselves. Not so much, like, at least for me, that's what Back to the Future is. Back to the Future is about the heart, not about the science.
I agree.
Yeah, for once, I think I want to be the guy who points out some possible marketing stuff. The reason I like the idea of using Doc and Michael Keaton is I think that's a selling point.
We are going to name every Michael except Michael J. Fox.
Yeah,
Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton.
By the way, Michael
J. Fox.
Michael Keaton as the villain in this movie could be good.
Yes, actually, that's what I meant.
Let's put that. I'll put that on the memory palace shelf.
Yeah. So then, but using those guys and maybe even just using a few people from that in general to come back and be in it, even if it's just for a portion of it, is going to be a selling point. And then I also think, because I know I love the idea of doing a time thing, because what you then get to do is you get to do all the nostalgia stuff. So if you hit a 90s thing, an 80s thing, a 70s thing, as this chase through time happens, then you get the opportunity to give nostalgia to a huge portion of the population from each generation that you're hitting.
I also wonder, now that you say that, we are in this like glut of nostalgia. Is there any commentary that you can, because Back to the Future is also about nostalgia as well. It's a nostalgia we didn't have. Ironically, Meta have nostalgia for the thing about nostalgia.
Yes.
But that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah.
So like, I wonder if there is
totally.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the enjoyment of The Mandalorian is partly just because it really does look like Star Wars.
Right.
Yeah, so I wanted to focus a little bit on the idea of using Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd with all of this other stuff in mind, because I think that is a huge question, right? And like for me, I was trying to rack my brain. I was like, look, if we were going to start from scratch, who would be the new Doc Brown? Who would be the new Marty McFly? I don't know that I have a good answer. I think maybe let's just talk about the characters for a second. Like, who do we want to make this movie about?
One thought that I had was, at the end of Back to the Future 3, they come, Doc and Clara and their two sons come back on this train, and their sons are dressed up like they're in the 1800s, but they're whizzing around time. Like, what would that kid be like in 20 years? Where, back to what I was saying, it's like he's never grown up in a stable time period. Like, how weird is that kid, or how do you rebel against your time traveling parents? Like,
So
that's kind of weird.
I just had a flashback. They did that cartoon.
They did.
didn't
Back to the Future,
Yeah.
the animated series, where the kids would get into like Charles Dickens trouble or go
That's
back and
wild,
yeah. And somehow they brought the DeLorean back. So I don't think
course.
DeLorean's ever off the table.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there is something to like, you could do Doc's kids like Copernicus, and I can't remember the other one's name.
It was probably like Galileo or something.
dude, but
Oh,
what about-
Jules, like Jules
Oh,
Verne.
like
Verne.
Jules
Or
Verne.
maybe it was Jules and Verne, and Copernicus was the, I don't know.
Well,
Was
dude,
the dog?
Yeah.
All I'm saying,
Oh, I think that's right.
I think at this juncture, I would just like to throw out maybe to put on the shelf. They're evil. Those people are evil. This concept that you could grow up with that much power at your fingertips and knowing exactly maybe how to not knowing how to retrofit that thing, but having that sort of knowledge just laying in your house. It's like a gun in your house. It's
Okay.
gonna get used on some
Interesting.
level.
Jules?
And one of them being bad or something like that could be super fresh, and it could be super motivated by the fact that their upbringing is so strange. And then
So you want one of them's like the Kylo Ren of Back to the Future.
Yeah.
I don't.
I love that idea.
Guys, let's not ignore the fact that like creepy time traveling twins are a good villain. Like
Yeah.
that's a good villain.
I
That'd
really
be a
like
great
that idea.
reveal, actually, halfway through the movie when you find out that's who the bad guys are. It's like it's the sons of Doc.
Well, and let's double down even. You know what's even better about that is you could play the world where Doc Brown is long dead, but we're having a time travel adventure, so you could still bring Christopher Lloyd back as Doc Brown in some
Right.
capacity. And again, the villains don't have, they can be redeemed at the end even. So
And
it's
there
like
could
they
be-
don't have to be Satan. But
Right,
I think
right,
making
yeah.
them villains is interesting.
And maybe part of the adventure is going back to make them not be villains, because it's like, these adventures are in the end very self-serving.
Yeah.
And that's what makes them motivated. I agree with Billy that it's not so much about science. It's about, help my dad. Help my dad is different than time stream and this, that, and the
Right.
other.
Well, and by the way, getting into your point about making a commentary about nostalgia, what better way than to have kids who have literally lived through any time you could think come to the present and say, no, this sucks. It's got to be like, look, I grew up in the 1880s.
Yeah.
That was where it's at.
That's very
And you make them the villains?
like the Bill Mummy episode of Twilight Zone, where he just can make anything the way that he wants it to, and people are like afraid of him.
Oh, if their methodology as villains is just butterfly affecting, and like nobody realizes it's happening because
Yeah.
like they're the only ones with that out of time perspective.
And see, and the thing is, then you could make, just as an idea maybe, the hero is somebody who notices this fluctuation in time
Exactly.
or
We
something
and
like that.
maybe we don't know. That's the other thing about Back to the Future, and that's why like we've gotten to this point in just consuming media today, where we need everything to be CinemaSins proof and very logical, and everything must be canon. Where it's like, if Back to the Future came out today, I don't think anyone could get past the fact, like, why is this kid hanging out with this old man? I don't buy any of this. But I think that's part of Back to the Future's charms, like, just go with it. This is the world that we've set up. So I think it's fine if our protagonist, for whatever reason, is the one person that's like, wait a minute, this wasn't the way that it was yesterday.
It's the Mandela effect.
Right.
Holy shit. Wait,
that
people
explains the Mandela
love that.
effect.
Like the internet loves the Mandela effect. This movie explains the Mandela effect.
Yep.
That would be sick.
the Jules Verne,
Yeah.
Jules and Verne effect. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
You guys are geniuses.
That's what's happening. So yeah, so if that person, archaeologist of time, knower of what happened, sees that all of a sudden things are changed, and he's like, wait a minute, I remember this volume perfectly because I am so smart, and it is now changed. No, this is weird, and then that's another one. And they have a Mandela effect, and then they chart it as one amongst many, and it's leading them to something.
But see,
Second twist, it's Marty McFly's kid.
Whoa, wait. Let me do you one better. It's Biff's kid.
Oh,
We
As
Cobra
the good
Kai.
guy.
We Cobra Kai this.
love
Doc
it.
Brown's kids are the villains. Biff's kid is the hero.
I love it.
yeah, I like that a lot
And
too.
then, by the way, you bring Michael J. Fox back in the Doc Brown role. Like, he is now the mentor to Biff's kid, being sort of like an old, crazy weirdo. He doesn't have to be as active in the story, I guess, as Doc Brown, because I know Michael J. Fox has the Parkinson's, and I don't know where he's at with that. But still an interesting role to put him in now as, like, the wizened mentor, because he'd be the only other person who has this perspective on shit. Like,
Yeah.
he would know what's going on. He lived it.
Right. Yeah. No, definitely. I like that, all that reversal too. And yeah, I kind of like if it's Biff's kid too. It's like, I like the idea that it's like, you know, the reason why we buy Marty's adventures in the first one is because he's not Doc Brown. He is us. So I like the idea of like Biff's kid, like, this is kind of weird. And I remember my dad kind of telling me like these stories, like, could this all be the same thing?
Well, how about, I mean, talk about like your mid-movie reversal. The moment when Biff's kid realizes he or she could have grown up with a dad who was like rich and powerful, except for what Marty did in the past. You throw that on top, and it becomes this thing where it's like that. Now your hero has to come to understand that what they did was for the greater good, even if it hurt the hero, you know, personally. We're getting back to the parents thing. If the hero always grew up having a really negative opinion of her dad because he is sort of like this subservient milquetoast guy, and then she or he has to learn that that is a better way to be than being like the rich and powerful asshole. You know what I mean? It's like there's a whole character arc there where it's like has a bad relationship, thinks her dad's kind of a pussy, for lack of a better way to put it, goes through this adventure of like, okay, I'm caught up in an adventure that maybe has nothing to do with my dad, but halfway through I learn that, oh no, this did affect my dad and it turned him into this other person, but he could have been this guy. You spend a little bit of the movie like, I wish I would have had that life, but then you make that turn of like, no, I didn't actually want that life.
Right.
You know, I see it. There's a character arc there. There's growth there.
That's awesome. So also, maybe this is maybe just an add-in, and maybe it's a dumb idea. You guys will tell me. But what if it was a little bit of a buddy cop movie where her best friend got caught up in the adventure sort of unwillingly, so that she has a partner on the adventure the whole time? I feel like we're making it a she because that just feels like a right thing.
Yeah, it feels like we're in that time period. So that would kind of be playing the George McFly role from the original movie.
Maybe.
Well, and I mean, we could make that. We could get even weirder with that, though, right? Because maybe that duo, the partner, shows up in whatever time travel we do.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I think to avoid it getting too complicated.
Yeah, that's my worry about that. Yeah.
It's just like, you know, I think that's what the brilliance of Back to the Future is. You're taking these really complex, you know, like time things, and you're throwing out the complexity somehow. And it becomes a very simple, linear story that you actually could elevate or pitch pretty easily. And I think that's where our reboot has to, or, you know, bootquel, whatever it's going to be, has to go, where ultimately, like, it does pay homage to where we've gone before and can even continue that thread. But had you never seen the other ones, this one still has to work in a very linear fashion about the people, the daughter. But I like the idea, like, if you didn't know who Biff was, I still think the idea of like finding out who your parents really were could be interesting, because Marty didn't find out that his parents were a jerk, you know, like it's basically just the mirror of the first movie from the other POV, which is what I think makes Back to the Future Part 2 very cool.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, and how many of us would love to go find out why our parents became who they were in a lot of ways, right?
By the way, guys, too, you just made me think of it, Billy. Given today's modern technology, there's no reason why we can't go back to Back to the Future Part 2, where they go back to the Future Part 1.
Exactly.
Like, we have to layer another adventure on top of that.
That is
stuff.
for sure going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely think, you could even probably now, especially, you know, we've seen with like Ant-Man and Captain America and stuff, you could probably get, you know, the Biff actor Thomas Wilson back in his like Trumpish makeup and go see why your dad shouldn't have been in that position, you know?
Oh, totally.
Revisit those scenes like we would in Back to the Future 1.
Totally. Whoa!
Oh, no.
Oh, God. Hi.
Bless it. Oh. Gentleman in his eye, John Peters. I hope you're enjoying your time here in your beautiful office.
Yes, thank you for this.
So I know you're working hard on this Back to the Future movie. I'm here to tell you I have one element that no matter what story we're telling, because really I don't care, but the one thing that this Back to the Future movie needs, the one thing, is I want a giant dragon dog like that movie, The Never-Ending Story.
Okay.
Okay, gentlemen, giant dragon dog. I expect it on my desk by 2 p.m. tomorrow. Enjoy the coffee here in your beautiful office. Goodbye.
Okay, dragon dog. Well,
Easy.
Look. Oh, go ahead, Ron.
Future.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think
Yep.
if we're going through time, I think you get in the real messed up weirdo, like, huh? How did we get to this?
Flying skateboards, we've got dragon dogs.
Absolutely. And it's one of those ripple effects that we explore for a second, or we see in a montage of them that suggests that Jules and Fern are out of control, and this needs to be handled because there's dragon dog dimensions, there's samurai surfers.
I love that idea too of like, what could they have possibly done where Dragon Dog was the end result, you know?
I mean, if you give them a dog like Copernicus in the original setup, maybe there's a moment where they're really messing with time, and the dog just momentarily transforms into a dragon. It's like you're almost getting that Paul Rudd in Avengers Endgame, where
Yes.
it's like
Right, yeah.
he just cycles through different versions of himself.
Right. That, and also just the whole thing of like, I shall do an experiment, and he goes back to super, primeval times and makes these breed or something. Well, maybe not like beat
Or
for beat.
They kick a dog in like the year 1000 BC, and then next thing you know, there's dragon dogs in the future.
It's like, they adapted the kicks with flames. It's like
Exactly.
overkill evolution.
We're all being the human race is subjugated by dragon dogs. So then they go back to the past and they tackle him as he's about to kick that dog. No!
Jules,
And
don't do it.
that could also be just a real quick, funny way of telling today's audience of like, here's how our time travel works. There's a whole generation of kids that are going to grow up with Avengers Endgame kind of thoughts of how time travel works. So I think reintroducing the rules of time travel Back to the Future style, I think could be, and doing it in a way, where it's not so like scientific, but more, and show it.
and funny.
And a gimmick.
Yeah.
Yes.
I totally agree with that. Okay, so let's get our feet under us with characters, because I like where we're going, but I think next big step, given how influential the first one was in this regard, is casting. We have to really bring our A game to the casting on this, because that Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, Crispin Glover, Leia Thompson, Tom Wilson 5-pointed star is satanically beautiful in that original setup.
Yeah.
So
All right. Well, as a way to go, I do understand that this is a children's like situation, and like a teen person is like the automatic thing. But what if it wasn't?
okay.
Obviously there's got to be a teen in there.
Yeah,
obviously. But what if the main person was somebody who thought that they were out of the time travel jazz? Because there's one thing that's interesting to me about if we're going to have any legacy in here at all, any at all, if it is Marty McFly's kid or Biff's kid. What if they got to an age where like even like 25 or 30 is so old in this scenario where to not have had time travel touch your life really, and then all of a sudden it drops on you like a ton of bricks. Like, I was living my life as an accountant doing stuff, and I didn't know nothing about none of this, and then it just drops on you.
It's like
and your kid, maybe.
the Neo in the Matrix, where it's
Yeah.
like we almost didn't want to pull you too old because you're so set in your way.
You're set in this life of all that's fiction. Maybe it's tales that your daddy used to tell. Be like, I was a big person. They told me I got big, and then they said it was wrong, and it's wrong for me to win. You grew up with a daddy that
especially
thinks like that.
if it's Biff's kid, you have to think Biff is probably, he's a drinker, and she probably thinks like he's just this crazy old jerk.
Well, see, I don't know. I don't know if you play it that way. I think you sort of play Biff as like the ultimate sort of nice, because it wasn't the resolution was that at the end of all of this, Biff turned out to be like George McFly's sycophant.
Yes.
Right? And so I don't know that you want to play him as somebody who has like a horrible life. I think you want to play him as just somebody who's a beta, right? Like he's the ultimate beta.
Quote unquote.
Yeah. He's just a guy who's like happy and content with like his very simple life, has no real ambition. I mean, he's basically a reformed bully, right? So the idea of rather than being like a townie who lashes out at everybody over how disappointed he is with his life, he's just cool with it. Like he's fine with washing George's
also,
car.
just something to throw in there, that's the reason why the adventure has to take place, because of the fact of Marty McFly and them. Like I said, which we could cover in 2 seconds. Marty McFly and them's adventure that set their thing right, set his stuff wrong, causing a big giant causal loop that's messed up, and somebody from the future has to come back to this time and go, look, you being a loser and your daughter being an accountant really ruined the time stream. So we have to have an adventure now. You know what I mean? Something like along those lines.
Interesting.
That's interesting because then, I mean, I know we're not going to the end of this yet, but a potential ending becomes where Biff, as a character, is now partners with Marty McFly. They've gotten over their, riff of bullying. Both of them forgave each other, and they end up working together for something that helps in the future. Maybe.
The only thing that gives me pause there is they're not the main characters.
Yeah, that's true.
And so it's like they don't necessarily have to have that arc. I mean, I like the idea of some sort of weird reconciliation where it's like the first movie sort of swung it too far one way, right, where it totally disempowers Biff, and then in this movie we can swing it back the other way where it like undoes for momentarily kind of everything that Marty accomplished in the first movie, and then it's like to end this movie or this series, if we're going to make it a multi-parter, it finds that middle ground where like everybody can be their best selves.
And maybe
I think thematically that's the best way, because we've become more woke, quote unquote,
Sure.
and it's not about somebody being subservient to you and that being the natural order of things. The natural order of things should be cooperation between peoples.
That being said, Biff was like a attempted
shit.
rapist.
Yeah.
Like you can't make him too sympathetic. And I do think like in the world of Back to the Future, especially because he was, the cartoon nemesis and the nemesis in the ride, like I always feel like you can't fully redeem Biff. I think you can,
I guess that's a good point.
I think you can, he's never going to be because I even think, and maybe this was just my interpretation of the movie, like I think he was scared of George McFly and was like, yes, Mr. McFly, but I think on the car ride home, he's like, God, I hate that guy.
Really?
Yeah, I really do.
See, I don't know, and maybe this is just me wanting a happy ending and feeling like it's the type of movie where you should get a happy ending. I sort of felt like that punch set Biff right, and who knows what happens in the intervening 20 years, but like I sort of feel like, yes, he's very subservient to George, and then he goes home and it's like, you know what? Today was a good day. And like all he needs is to go home, crack a beer, watch his favorite TV show, and like that's a good enough life because he was never going to be anything bigger than that. Well,
because he's an idiot.
That's what
Let's
I'm saying.
be real.
Like,
he is an idiot.
Once you take away like his bloodthirsty sort of like jerkishness, which is what got him so high in the second one, he doesn't have a lot going for him.
Well, but all I'm saying is, when your dad goes overboard with ambition, you know what I mean? That cows you to ambition. Maybe that's why the character, however old they are, is like not very ambitious, not very cool, and then somebody comes back from the time stream to go, you're not very ambitious or very cool, and we have to rectify that right now because look at this dragon duck or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like,
Well, I mean, I like the
Okay.
I like the idea. I like the setup there, right? I like the idea of somebody comes back, tells Biff's daughter, we need to get Biff back on top. And she's like, what are you talking about?
Or even
They're
just
like,
make it about Biff's daughter. You know what I'm saying? Because again, it's about the daugh's, how this generation
that
is
idea.
affected
Sure.
by the previous generation's adventures.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Okay, boomer.
Yeah.
Is there anything, and maybe
Okay,
this is just
Biffer.
overcomplicating it, but is there anything to the idea that, okay, so someone notices that time is getting messed up, and the first thought is Biff's at it again, and Doc, if we have a cameo from Doc, it's like it's got to be your dad, or like I know you don't have the best relationship with him, and this is why, because this is what he was doing to us. To only find out halfway
it's
through
his
the movie,
kids.
it's his kids, not Biff.
Interesting.
That's
well, I mean,
great.
I don't know if that's Doc, but it definitely could be Marty.
Right.
Right. And so, okay, let's try to settle down on this. So, I think that Marty and Doc are so sort of inextricably linked that could still land even if it's Doc's kids, right? And I think if you want the reveal of it being Doc's kids to land, you have to set Doc up as sort of this ephemeral hero in the beginning of this movie. So I think him being gone is good. I think Marty having a certain amount of hero worship for him is good. And Marty convincing whoever our protagonist is, no, it's Biff. It's got to be Biff. It's always Biff.
Right.
Is good. And so once you get all those pieces in place, then the idea of like, oh no, it's not Biff. It's actually Jules and Vern, Doc Brown's kids. Doc Brown failed them, and they are now butterflying, affecting their way through time. And then you could end up with a Doc Brown cameo somewhere in Act 2 where we bring him back, even though everybody celebrated him as this great gone hero. I mean, to me, that all tracks. I don't know.
Well,
I like that idea.
Well, if he's gone kind of chasing, if he's gone sort of...
I think he's dead.
Yeah.
I think Doc Brown
so too.
is dead at the
Yeah.
beginning of the movie.
I think so too.
And then again, we could still meet him
No, of course.
because he bounced his way through
that,
time.
Yeah, that makes all the sense.
But I think in our present day, where the ordinary world of the movie, Doc Brown is dead. Marty McFly. I mean, honestly, you could even play that Marty McFly has Parkinson's and just make that part of his character. Like, who's to say he didn't?
I think there are people in this world that have differing abilities, and that's nothing to shy away from.
No,
And
totally.
that actually even makes it marketable too, not to be totally cold-blooded, but it does, because when you represent people, and also it's just something we should all start doing, is representing
As
people.
long as you don't make it like the time travel
With
did
Parkinson's
this.
guys?
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
No,
I don't
it's
think
not
you do that.
causal.
Yeah.
I guess
Oh, the
also-
time travel gave him Parkinson's?
That's a weird. Yeah, it would just be like
we
a
definitely
weird,
should not do that.
No, that's that.
I
it would
have
just
time
be,
jitters.
No,
You're like, "Ugh."
That's
just
hilarious to me.
it's just a matter of fact.
Right.
Well, and so carrying this logic through, then Biff's daughter, whoever she is, would have grown up like, 10 years younger than Marty.
Yeah.
And so they would have theoretically grown up together. And if she don't like her daddy, then Biff's daughter could have a relationship in the current day with Marty where she still treats him as sort of like a mentor figure, almost the Doc Brown, Marty McFly situation.
Correct.
Yes.
That's
Right?
what I'm
Perfect.
thinking. Yeah.
Yes.
And so if she already doesn't like her dad, and they have some indication that like the timeline has gone wonky, and Marty is telling her it's your dad. What have you talked to your dad lately? It's got to be your dad. Again, boom, we're right into that where it's like you're doubling down on how she doesn't like her dad, and she's got all those negative feelings towards her dad.
Right, and I think that's where I like your idea of where he could have been, but I just think, and maybe he is, I don't even know if we ever see current day Biff in the story, if Biff only shows up in flashbacks, or different time periods, I should say.
I mean, we could treat him real Cobra Kai. We're doing Cobra Kai anyway. We could treat him like the master in Cobra Kai, where it's like he came in like at the end, I think, at the first season.
I don't know. I mean, I think Biff is in the story in so much as you need to see him transform the same way George McFly does in the first one. I mean, not to say that he's going to be a runner through the story. He's not going to be a supporting character necessarily, but I think you need. Here's Biff in the present day that his daughter has no respect for.
Right.
Here's Biff at the end, transformed due to the adventure, but now she has newfound respect. I mean, it could even be he's the same. It's just her opinion that changes.
Right. And
or
think
it could be him that changes. I don't know.
I actually like the idea of it's the same guy, but her view of him has changed. Because maybe you're right. Maybe it is just, like, look, no one is ever just like 100% content, and few people that we know are 100% evil. So I think Biff probably, as he's matured and gotten older, but if your mentor is Marty McFly and the only stories Marty has to tell of your dad is like, he's not a good guy,
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I really like that. I don't know why I keep going back to this. You guys might not be on board, so this will be the last time I bring it up if you don't like it. But the idea that she has resentment towards her dad for not being a bully in a certain sense. And I think that's her lesson to learn through the movie, right? Is if only my dad would have been more ambitious, would have been more cutthroat, would have been willing to step on people, we could have had a better life than we had. But he's just so soft.
Oh, I actually love this idea because she's blaming her current situation on him.
Right.
So I wouldn't be an accountant right now, or whatever crap
it is.
job that she has.
So would then her thought be like, these time changes, my dad must be trying to go back and change things because like there was an argument, or she finally just let it loose?
The only part for me that's not about no and or no but, but the only thing that doesn't track is how Biff would manipulate any sort of time stuff by himself after the events of the previous movie, or even if let's say time travels on the black market now, who gives a shit? Let's talk about that. You know what I mean? Like, how would he actually affect the time stream? I understand someone accusing him because of the past, but how would he actually do it for somebody to even feasibly?
Maybe he gets set up by Jules and Vern. Right?
I can see that, right?
Yeah.
Little
Yeah.
technology
Definitely.
stuff starts popping up. Like, and even the daughter going into his stuff, like, I haven't done anything. And then she goes in there and there's all this time crap. It's like, I haven't been in here in 10
It's a
years.
flux
What's
capacitor right here.
this?
I mean, that could be hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You open a closet.
It's just-
Oh, you have no flux capacitor? Then what is this?
Right, and I think it could be just a fun nod to the second one where there's like a cane head left somewhere, Black
Yep.
Dahlia style. I don't know. I think it sounds melodramatic when you say it, but I think that's what Back to the Future does best. Is it
Yeah.
takes these very big concepts, these very lowest common denominator concepts,
Yeah.
but brings so much heart to them that you buy it instantly.
All right, so where do we spend most of the movie, right? Where's the promise of the premise? Where do we spend most of the movie? Now that we have the basic setup.
All right, so sketching it out, you got Marty as the mentor to Biff's daughter. Do we want to give her a name? Biff's daughter, Biff Tannen. It could be like Tia Tannen or something like
Tara,
Lily.
Tara Tannen.
that. Lily, okay.
Lily Talent. Lily Tannen.
Lily Tannen. I don't care.
Yeah.
all right, and it's not a hill I would die on.
Yeah, I guess.
So
I just wanted to make it easier to talk about rather than just continuing to
Excuse
say
me, I
Biff's
like
daughter.
the proffer Tulip Tannen.
Ooh, I'm down with Tulip. I like the alliteration.
Tulip Tannen. I actually do
I
like
was just
that.
riffing on the Lily thing.
really, are we really?
No.
Okay.
No.
I
Not-
just was like Biff is not Biff. That name is just like you don't even need to know anything
Betsy.
about that character.
Yeah.
Her name is
Biff,
Betsy.
you're like, he's an idiot.
What about? Oh, what did you say? Biffany?
Betsy.
Like Tiffany.
'Cause
I'm
it's
thinking
born.
Tiffany
Tiff
Tannen.
Tannen,
I just think you go like
Tiffany Trump.
look if it's
I like that we're even talking about this.
if it's her character is she feels so ordinary. Give her the most plain ordinary name.
Jill.
Karen,
Karen.
Karen Tannen.
Brenda Tannen.
Because everyone has like a Doc, Marty, Biff, Karen. Like
I love it.
If you really want to throw out that
That
idea,
she's so ordinary.
right?
I'm down with that. I like Karen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Karen.
it is.
She,
Okay,
she
cool,
is
cool.
a Karen. Okay, so Karen is working as an accountant and she hates her life. And the only
Low-level accountant. by the
low
way.
level,
And it's
yeah.
a boring type of accounting too, like
I think-
accounting for like straws or something.
Yeah.
Something totally like.
No, it is so small town. There is nowhere beyond the small town world that she lives in, right? She's like an accountant for a car dealership or something. Anyway, she's an accountant. Marty is like the only bright spot in her life because Marty can regale her with tales of Doc Brown and their adventures as kids. And so we're setting Doc Brown up as this sort of, to be mourned lost hero. And then I would say Marty isn't explicit with her about like the part her dad played. He almost tries to avoid the topic of her dad because he didn't want to tell somebody like your dad's a piece of shit. But in her own mind, she realizes, oh, my dad is just not this guy. My dad grew up around this family, and the father's a best-selling author, and the kid had time travel adventures, and my dad is just this sad sack guy. And so then, somewhere in Act 1, our inciting incident is that something happens to make something happens to her. She talks to Marty about it, and Marty's like, in that great Michael J. Fox way, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
wait, what?
Yeah.
And Marty gets scared.
But also, and one thing I would like to throw out, if you were not married to Biff being alive, because think about it, he's alive a little bit and he's a jerk a little bit, and we get to see it, and we get to see the last dregs of it, and he raised his daughter, and then he dies, and she goes through all his stuff, and she discovers that he had time travel adventures, and he got the crap into the stick of, and her mentor knowingly knows that their lives suck because of his adventures that made his life great. I'm just saying, I just throwing it out there. That's kind of.
I mean, honestly, Biff's funeral in Act 1 could be a good ordinary world beat, right?
Yeah.
Like it could be like that could be a good reason to get her and Marty together anyway, right?
know.
It's like you get cameos from Leah Thompson and Crispin Glover there as Marty's parents because they're going to be at Biff's funeral. But it's like that could be part of setting up the world.
It also sets up too, like then as an audience member who doesn't know that a twist is coming, you're like, oh, he's not dead. He probably is going through time,
Oh, that could
changing
be
a bunch of things.
that could
It's
be
a great
interesting,
red
too.
herring,
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, we've got all these great elements. At some point, Does the DeLorean make an appearance? Do we have the flux capacitor attached to something else? How are we getting back in time, and what's the MacGuffin? What are they going after?
No, I think one thing that could be really interesting is early in the movie we see a DeLorean, but it's just some hipster douche with a DeLorean.
Yeah, I like the idea of reinventing the DeLorean, and I like that. I like that fake out too.
It's a bird scooter, you guys.
You got to get it up to 88 miles an hour.
Dude, that's so funny. Dude, those are going to go out of style so fast. It's like making a dated time travel movie. Like, we're meta. We're like Kafka with this meta stuff.
It's a Tesla.
It could be a Tesla.
Hey, that's kind of interesting.
It should be a Tesla.
That's kind of interesting.
I mean, you also got an interesting thing with the battery. Like, how do you supercharge the battery so it can power the flux capacitor? I mean, it's similar to the lightning bolt.
I actually think a Tesla, because you have to remember, it's funny and kitschy to us now, but a DeLorean in 85, that was the big luxury car.
Yeah.
He even says, like, if you're going to make one, make a cool one. So it's like, yeah, what's the equivalent of today? It's like the super powered Tesla, you know?
And by the way, you know Elon Musk would cameo in this movie.
Oh, for sure. Why not?
You know he would.
Hey,
Say something about time travel.
Hey, if Tesla actually helps fund the movie to get their cars in it, then...
Well, let me tell you something. We could work that deal out.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. Tesla is going to help Doc Brown around Act 2.5.
Yep.
Well, okay. So let's, without getting too deep in the weeds, I think there should be at least one. There's probably a possibility of having two non-present day, settings, and then somewhere between Act 2 and Act 3, we're going to have the time chase.
Right.
Right. So where does Act 2? In what era does Act 2 take place? Once Karen Tannen commandeers the Tesla or retrofits her Tesla with. Or no, what are we saying? Somebody comes back from the future, right? Somebody comes back from the future to clue her in. We got to change things.
Kyle Tannen comes from the future.
I mean, is that how we introduce Jules and Vern, and then they heel turn Mysterio style?
Yeah, they come and they're like, dude, you need to come on a dope adventure with us, lady.
And Marty's like, you got to trust them. They're Doc Brown's kids.
So why would they be coming to get? What do they need?
What do they need from her? Like, what's their secret
exactly.
plot? What's their secret plot?
Maybe they're blocking her from doing something she's supposed to do. But obviously, that's just the easiest answer. So what is that thing?
Sometimes Occam's razor. Sometimes though, like the easiest solution might be the right one because it's they need
very
something
easy.
from her.
Something about accounting. I know it sounds stupid, but literally she finds in the future, she's moved into a better accounting firm, and she finds some problem in there that doesn't seem right that has to do with Jules and Vern.
Well, I think it has to have something to do with Biff.
Well,
there needs to be a tie to Biff.
Like the whole, not to mention Watchmen, like a great piece of storytelling as far as cinema, but that thing where someone dies and you go through their stuff, that's serious business. Like when my grandpa died, we found like 1 billion guns. Oh. Like so many guns.
Dude, that's so weird. Same thing when my grandpa
Seriously?
died. We found guns all over the house.
You guys had a couple of prepper grandpas.
I had he was a Marine in World War II, so that makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, it's so weird that you say that.
I would just find a bunch of crosses.
Well, to stop vampires, wink. So I just think so if we go through Biff stuff and we find weird, almost 70 diaries of a person who was very nice on the outside but very tortured on the inside, and all these different things, and maybe just a little bit of that time travel stuff as far as a story.
Yeah.
And then Jules and Vern come and corroborate it. So she spends a minute thinking that her dad is just a crazy person, and then Jules and Vern come and corroborate the whole thing.
You got me thinking. I wonder, do you do kind of a reversal or a spin on the almanac in part 2, where when Biff dies, there's something that she is given that she doesn't think is important.
Yes.
But those twins want it, and they want to take it back to somewhere.
And so
Yes.
let me build on that. One of the things I've always loved about time travel as a story conceit, and they lean into it in the early Terminator movies, is that you can only go back and affect the past if you know exactly when a thing happened.
Right.
Right? So maybe she knows something from her life or Biff's life. Like she has to basically be their compass. Like they know that this thing happened, but they don't know when or where. And so they need her to bring them to this particular point so that they can stop or change or whatever.
So I guess to
And
work
so
back.
1985 is where they go back
Well,
to.
Could be.
possibly, but that I think
Possibly.
we need to know what the brothers want ultimately, so we can work backwards.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
So what are they trying to accomplish?
Okay.
We know that they keep changing things, and we've thought maybe it's because they want to make the world the way they are. So what obstacle is in their path that they need to finally undo?
Dude, I mean, do we make them sympathetic if unhinged, as is the style of the time? Are they trying to save their dad in a weird way?
I think that's great.
That's great.
I think having them just be jerks, it's
Right.
kind of, it makes Doc look bad. It's like, why would you raise these psychos?
They're,
But-
they're not jerks because they're just so bad. They're jerks because they have a certain, like, there's a privilege to time travel, and it makes you kind of
exactly.
a jerk.
Imagine if you knew, like, my
They have a god complex.
yeah, my
Yes.
father is gone, but I can fix this.
Yeah.
You know, something that no one else in the world even knows really is a possibility.
What if there's... What if we play with another theory of time travel where like their dad's death becomes this immutable thing that no matter this goes back to Jules Verne's version of the time machine. No matter
Right.
what they do, he always dies at this one point.
Exactly.
And they can't change it. And he seems content with it, but they're raging against the dying of the light, right? They're like, no, we can fix this. We can all live forever. That's sort of like the idea, right? And so they need to learn to make peace with the fact that they're going to lose their dad, and that's okay. And looking back to the times you had growing up and continuing to try to relive them is not the best way to live your life.
I love
and,
that so
and it's perfect
much.
because they're recruiting a daughter whose dad just died.
Yeah.
And is getting over that at the same time.
And they could play on that. They can play on her mixed feelings about her dad. And
Right.
like, did he go far enough? Because they would think that their dad, Doc Brown, didn't go far enough with what he did to the timeline. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
She thinks the same thing. My dad, he never fought hard enough for a good life.
So you said 1985, and now I'm almost wondering, you know, if it has something to do, if we really want to tie it all the way back. It's like, we know our dad was supposed to die once, and it was able to be fixed. Maybe that's the point in time, you know, because they always say like,
with the Libyans.
right, exactly.
Yeah, he was supposed to
They
die
always
right
say like,
there.
you know, because Doc says in part 2, because they're like, I can't believe it's 1955. He's like, it must be some center point where time all intersects. They're like,
Yeah.
we
That
found
was the first time they turned the time machine on.
Right.
Was in that moment. And if
Right.
that becomes the nexus of everything.
right.
and you get to see the DeLorean that way as well.
And you get to nostalgically, but I think that's also a great meta commentary. Where it's like we get to nostalgically see Back to the Future again, which we all want, but we also are learning that we have to say goodbye and move on if we want
Yes.
new stories,
Guys,
Yeah.
chills.
right?
Yeah, this is great. Man, we really are great at this.
So I want to derail us. I mean, I think we've got the broad strokes of a story that really works. And now that we've developed these characters in our mind, we need to cast this thing. I want to know.
really tough.
I want to know who's directing. What's this going to look like? Who's going to be in it? And so the big roles that we're casting are Karen Tannen, Jules and Vern, and whatever age they might be, and then, I mean, really, it's Marty and Biff and.
Okay.
Why is that funny?
Yeah.
I was thinking of two people we can't actually have do it,
Oh,
but this is Key and Peele.
Key and Peele are
As Jules and Vern. Just because it
Well,
was
it's-
They
it's-
really mess with the timeline.
I mean, that also is interesting in terms of casting. It's like if these boys have been traveling through time, how old are they?
Guys,
you know?
yes.
How do we even gauge that?
I have to throw this out because I think you're going to love it. And all credit goes to my wife. I was talking to her about the fact that we were doing this. And I said, who could play like today's version of Doc Brown? Like who has that right combination of comedic talent, manic energy, is established enough that like people would want to see? She had it right away. Michael Shannon. Michael Shannon as Jules or Vern. Like in kind of manic comedy mode could be unbelievable.
So I think Jules is like slightly older, maybe a couple years older than the other one, so that he could be the older brother. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have to go with that, but I just thought that was.
No,
I thought that was a great
Michael
suggestion.
Shannon.
Yeah.
Now,
Finding a place for Michael Shannon is always good.
That's what I'm saying.
also,
Although, does it make more sense if they are on the same like age level as Biff's dog? Like, does it
Maybe.
make them seem like psychopaths if they're almost 50 and can't let go of their dad? Or
That's a fair point. I mean, yeah, as we've talked about this, there is something to really making them like as likable as possible.
Exactly.
So you get
Right.
that heel turn.
that's why I like Tom Holland. Every time, guys.
one of these times,
One of these
it'll be
times
right.
it's going to be right. Okay.
I mean, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
as the modern day riff on Michael J. Fox, you're right.
That's what I'm saying.
You are right.
I actually am right this time.
Yeah.
well, I mean, yeah, Marty already had a cool kid that looks exactly like him. So what if his grandson looks like Tom Holland?
I had this thought earlier, and this is a little bit of field from the casting, but it could be funny if Michael J. Fox has kind of a like a snarky younger kid, and you get sort of a babysitter young kid relationship between Karen and the young McFly, almost like a bad Santa, where you just have that kid who's just there causing problems because he's a little piece of crap.
And also, he comes from that, those damn LaRussos. You know what I mean? To reference Cobra Kai yet again. The LaRusso kids
Right.
are a little like, they're like privileged because their dad was so not privileged. He's
Yeah.
given them everything. So like Marty McFly's kids being kind of little jerks would track. It's almost like how but anyway, I was thinking for Karen.
Yeah, let's cast Karen.
I want to cast Karen, and like I said, I think someone of age, not old by any means, but like Kristen Bell from The Good Place has shown a remarkable ability to A, connect with audiences, B, explain giant concepts, C, be involved in them and ground them. The Good Place works because she can talk about fake, ridiculous, transmorphic, and sell it.
It's funny that you say Kristen Bell. I was thinking Anna Kendrick, but I feel like they're very similar. I
In
think
that,
we're on
yeah.
the same wavelength
Yeah.
of like kind of like a softer touch female in comparison to the very rough edged Biff.
Yeah, look,
Yeah.
I really like the Kristen Bell idea. I mean, I
do
think
too.
Yeah.
she's also at a point in her career where she should be exploring like leading roles in movies. And
Yes.
I know she's got a family and kids, and that might be a stickler. But given that we're just moonshotting this,
A beautiful little franchise for her to have, and just go back to get her some Robert Downey Jr. money. That'll put your kids in college. You won't have to cheat like the Desperate Housewives.
that's pretty good. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I guess is this kind of like a Force Awakens situations where we don't have to worry that the world doesn't know who like Daisy Ridley is, that we're more selling Back to the Future than we are the name.
I mean, I think that's a decision we have to make, right? Because I think if you cast Kristen Bell, it becomes a Kristen Bell vehicle.
I think there's
lady.
also, Naomi Harris. I think that's the correct Jasmine.
Oh, sure, yeah.
From Aladdin, and she's now coming out in Charlie's Angels. Like, I feel like she might be. If we're selling this on like the original cast, at least has cameos, and it's Back to the Future. She's enough of a star that I think she can pull it off. But we don't have to worry about it becoming like a Anna Kendrick movie or a Kristen Bell movie. You know?
Yeah.
Right.
Nice. Yeah, I just think if we pick a lady that's like kind of like how Michael J. Fox was, somebody steady TV job, and then they're ready to transition to a movie star, but they're not necessarily a lock. And this performance is what's going to help them to be that. That's why I didn't pitch anybody that wasn't actually a movie star already.
No, I mean, I think that's a good argument for having somebody who's like in their 20s, you know what I mean? Somebody who's a little bit younger, who maybe is not the age to be able to play a mom or be a mom, but is like, again, on the cusp. And I feel like I don't watch enough TV to know who that person would be, because to me it feels like somebody who's just stood out on a TV show and is now ready to matriculate.
Yeah.
Who is in who's the lead actress for iZombie?
Oh, interesting. I don't know her name. Rose McIver. I do know her name.
Yeah.
Oh,
Rose
nice.
McIver.
That's a nice pull.
Yeah. She's kind of like Kristen Bell light, right? Like she's like the young New Zealand version of Kristen
Yeah.
Bell.
About like an Alison Brie.
Ooh.
Oh, I just love Alison Brie. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
we could. there's a couple girls on Glow that we could cast.
Right.
Yeah. I think we plumb Glow.
Yeah.
We see these different TV actors that they want to do it, and we pick one from that oeuvre. I think people know what we're talking about. That's a nice pool.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that.
I mean, now that we're talking TV actors, I'm going to go to Ron's favorite pick. You could get the two Supernatural guys to play Jules and Vern.
Oh my gosh.
A little distracting.
I just blew his mind.
It would be distracting
It would be
because
super
you just
distracting.
have Supernatural
You
fans
just
being like,
have- You just have Dean and Sam.
Sam. Yeah. Oh, but they do have a good brother.
I actually think maybe not Padalecki, but Jensen could potentially. I think he'd actually be pretty good. He's good at those roles. I don't know if you ever saw the Batman Under the Red Hood where he did the voice of Red Hood.
Sure.
I think he's good at those roles where it's a little gray area, which it sounds like we're kind of putting the Jules and Verne characters into.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
How about
wait a minute.
Fassbender and Army Hammer?
So wait a minute. Am I getting?
Ooh, no Army Hammer ever.
Am I getting Jensen Ackles and Tom Holland?
I mean,
The
honestly,
age difference is a little
Yeah, it's a little too
jarring.
much, but
But here's another funny thought, just to slapstick it up a little bit. If they are two drastically different ages, because in the
'Cause they
backstory,
decided to.
yeah, like somebody got stuck somewhere and then he had to go back, but it's like they got pissed at each other, so he left him in somewhere for like 20 years, then picked him up later, and they've been
is kinda
traveling
funny.
that way.
Oh
ever
yeah,
since.
what? That's the Michael Shannon one, and that's why he's so weird. He got left. He got stranded in time.
I don't know because I like it as a comedy bit, but then it's like it feels too jarring. Where it's like, okay, well then go back in time and get him later once he's learned his lesson.
But also, that's one thing we must.
except for that, maybe he just liked the way he looked at that age. He was like, I just look so good.
Well, but also this thing of like one of the factors in this movie, we're talking about what makes these movies work. I need enough power to power my thing. I need to make it into a train. This isn't no snap your fingers time travel, guys. So we got to think of like some of the limitations that they have in their time travel. Maybe they used up all their juice to come back to this time. And they got one more trip, but they got to jump to a specific time and do the exact right thing. And you must follow these instructions exactly as I tell you. And it's very important. And
And then when they get there, everything backfires.
Well, I
and
was
they
gonna
have
say,
to figure it out.
but don't they have the Mr. Fusion?
yeah.
but
like I said,
see, I
we
think
need to
the-
determine the level of their power.
I think the genius, especially of part 3, was they always found new ways that the DeLorean was not going to be able to work.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, I guess all I need is Act 3 needs to be the Tesla and the DeLorean in a chase through time. That's what we were saying, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
we need that.
Imagine they get, we think they get what they want, and then they leave Karen behind, and she's able to get back to that DeLorean. Huge audience
dude.
clapping moment,
yeah.
Doc Brown, yes. So like Doc Brown and Marty have been kidnapped from the Libyan moment, leaving just Karen in the DeLorean. So she hops in the DeLorean and beelines after them.
and the
Right.
freaking license plate moment, so we get an homage.
It would be just like when they ran over to the Falcon in Force Awakens, and it got a huge applause.
Yeah.
in the
Yeah,
theater,
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, I'm liking your idea of Tom Holland as one of these kids. I mean, I also think that he's a talented enough comedic performer that if you can get somebody who's like on the same vibe as him, maybe a couple years older, so that they can have sort of like a funny, bickering sibling
I
relationship.
know that they're going to do a movie next year, but would it be too much to kind of use the same relationship and have Chris Pratt and Tom Holland? Because I know they're playing brothers in an animated movie.
Okay.
I was actually thinking you could really tickle some people's funny bones with Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield.
That is interesting.
I mean,
I was gonna make a weird one. Daniel Radcliffe.
Actually, yes.
I think Daniel Radcliffe's a great
Oh my
choice.
God.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
That's
Daniel
nice.
Radcliffe and Tom Holland.
Yeah.
I could totally believe
That's
that
nice.
they're- Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice.
Oh,
I think that's
I'm
nice.
locked in.
That's
I'm locked
nice.
Guys, I think the last thing we have to do for this movie is who's going to direct?
Taika
Taika Waititi? I thought the same
Waititi.
thing.
I immediately think that.
And it's not just a sexy choice.
No, I was gonna say I think it seems to today to be like the default choice.
Yeah.
But I do think this hits everything in his wheelhouse: the heart, the comedy, the special effects. If you can get all three in the spectacle, if you can get all three of those, you got a stew, baby. And I think
Yeah.
Taika Waititi is a chef and he knows how to make those stews, you know?
And the homage to 80s stuff and that sort of thing is right up at his.
Yeah. I mean, look, yeah, he's the easy choice for an action comedy with heart. It's totally true. But I don't know who else is making those kind of movies
The
right
only
now.
other out of the box one that I had, and I just don't know if she can do the action just because that's nothing she's portrayed, but who I think could nail the heart and the characters and the teenage stuff and the humor is Olivia Wilde.
Oh,
I
dude,
was
that movie was so good.
very impressed by Booksmart, and I think she really knows how to juggle those characters and the comedy and the when they take the drugs and they go into that weird thing. Like, I know she's visually she's capable. She hasn't done a big action, but hey, would you have said the Russo brothers could do Winter Soldier at that time?
right,
So
right.
Dude,
I would nominate Olivia Wilde.
I'm sold. Olivia Wilde directing an ingenue in the making as Karen.
That's
with
beautiful.
Tom Holland and Daniel Radcliffe as the bickering heel turn brothers who become the villains of the story. Guys, I think we got a movie.
We got a movie, baby.
Dude. Wow. And we worked in the Dragon Dogs. Dude, we're on fire, guys.
Oh, well, guys, as usual, that was a long, fun road. To everybody watching, if you enjoyed what we did here, subscribe. You can get this as a podcast, either on the Nerd Goat podcast feed or the Hot Takes with Billy Business feed. But you know you like the video even more. So, until next time, we are here in our luxurious development executive office, waiting for John Peters to come in and give us our next assignment. Bye, everybody.